Okay, so in this video I'm going to do the shoulder pads and maybe we'll do the hip pads. We'll see how far we get. So if you open up APB Mani in your retargeted animations folder, then what we can do then is between the slot and the output pose, we're going to right click and type in Anim Dynamics, which will give us this node. And you can see here that we've got this this white colored icon, and this is a blue. And when we try to connect these things, it's going to basically create a little conversion node for us. That is normal and expected, so don't worry about that. And then here, I'm just going to go ahead and check on all of these view settings. Simulation space is good for component. Component is the skeletal mesh component, not like a vertice or something like that in Maya lingo. So that would be the skeletal mesh component. The actor would be the character actor. World would be true world space, but component is usually what we want. And the bound bone, I'm going to do shoulder pad. And let's go ahead and hit compile. And when we do that, you'll see that there's a little box here now. And Anim Dynamics still are one of the weirdest setups, I think, that I've ever seen. They're just very non-intuitive in my opinion. But we have these box extents, and that's the box you see here. So I think the shape of those, like the volume of them, can definitely impact how it moves. So I tend to just I'll make it a little bit longer in X to kind of give it a similar. I'm not going to try to move it into the same space as the shoulder pad. And that's because of this next part, this local joint offset. Like if I really wanted it to go into the same space as the shoulder pad, like I'd probably do something like this. The problem with that is this local joint offset, if you picture like a seesaw and the pivot on a seesaw, if you were to move that pivot, it would change how that, plank of wood, rotates on that pivot. And that's kind of like what this local joint offset does. So at 0, it's kind of like almost like perfectly balanced. And we kind of want to get it off balanced. So, I could do like, let's see if -1 goes up. Yeah, so that goes up. So -1 might be too much. Let's go like -0.1. It's just enough to get it off balance to kind of give it a push and get it to start moving. So now we have our constraint setup, and we have linear and angular limits. I want my x-axis, which is going down my arm, to maybe get like, I don't know, -5. And because x is going down, -5 would mean there's room to move up. And then my angular, I'm probably going to do like -10 and 10 in x. So that's going to be the twist axis. And then y will be this kind of like swing axis here. So maybe we just do like -5 and 5. And now you can kind of see those things. So let's take a look at this in game. So I don't know if you can notice, but there's now a slight offset to the arm motion. It's not like completely stuck with the arm. And if we jump, interesting. So when we jump, it tends to get stuck. So let's go back here and maybe let me do search for damping, and we're going to do linear damping override. If you hover over this, it will say the default is 0.7. So let's try 0.9 and give it a shot. It's a little bit better. It is kind of going in a little bit too much there. So that's where we could also play with the local joint offset. So right now we had -0.1. We could try -1. Yeah, it's really weird what it's doing right there. Maybe I'll get rid of the linear axes. So let's turn that off. And then let's see how this looks. Yeah, honestly, that looks a lot better. And Z axis would be kind of this side to side, so we don't really need that, but we could try upping the Y axis a bit. You can see that the difference between the left side and the right side, the left side has a bigger gap now between the arm and the shoulder pad, and that's due to that Y-axis increase. So what we probably need to do, let's go from this view and see which direction. There we go. So we can essentially get rid of the, it's not that we want to get rid of the negative, we actually want to keep it. But what we probably want to do is take a look at this and see if we want to go the other way. So you can see when we do 1, now we want to maybe do 5 here, or 3. So it rests a little bit closer. It's pretty subtle, but you know, you can kind of see it doing something different than just sticking straight to the arm. Let's try maybe moving that even up more. So negative 20 on the Y, that way, yeah, that little fall that happens right there, that's perfect. We can do slow mo 0.2, and that way we can actually see right around here it starts to do that. That's perfect. So yeah, I think this is great. These settings work. So what we're going to do now is we'll copy this, paste this, go in here, change this to the shoulder pad R, and we might have to swap these values around. So on the right side, X doesn't go down the arm, it goes negative X goes down the arm. So local joint offset would want to be -1, and that should be it. Let's see here. Again, I'm going to do slow-mo again, so we can kind of take a look and see. Perfect. We can do slow-mo 1 to get back to normal speed. All right, so that takes care of that. Let's go into the hip area, and you can see due to our cloth, we are already kind of clipping in. So let's take a look at our clothing here. So maybe it's not the cloth, it might be the collisions. Yep, it's that right there is pushing it out. So skirt collisions, and it's this here that we just want to bring in like that. Looks like this side was already pretty good. Okay, let's take a look. But you can see here that even with the collisions looking better, it still does clip there. Okay, so for the hip pads, rather than do the same method with anim dynamics, just to show more stuff, we're going to do the hip pads with a rigid body physics. So if we come in here and we type in rigid body, we'll get that. And basically, this is going to take in a node, a physics asset node right here, which we'll need to create real quick. So let me do that. We'll go to meshes, sknights, create physics asset. Again, I'm just going to do create, not create and assign. And that's fine. And I'm going to call this one sknight dynamics. And like I've done before, we'll just delete all bodies below and go ahead and show all bones. And because of what we're going to use this for, which is basically just these hip pads, maybe the belt, we'll see. Because I do have a bone in the belt to be able to move that. What we'll want to do is mostly put a collision on the thigh. So we'll add a capsule. We're not going to do a tapered capsule for that because we're not using cloth, so we're just going to do a normal capsule. And we don't need to cover the whole leg, just enough for this like hip pad area. And we don't even have to really worry about clipping so much here, because what we'll do is we'll put a body at the end of the hip pad over here, and that will allow us to collide with this. So we'll just get something in kind of like this, maybe rotate it a little bit like that, and let's hit M to mirror that. And if we click on these bodies, what we're going to do is go to details and set these to kinematic, meaning that these will not simulate, these will not ragdoll. What they will do is just take the animation, they will just follow what the animation on the bones is doing. So if we were to hit simulate, nothing should really happen because nothing is set to actually be a simulated body at this point. And we'll also want to do a pelvis shape as well, so I'll do a capsule on there. And the reason for that is because these hip pads are actually a child of the pelvis, and so by doing a pelvis shape we'll be able to create those constraints for the physics body. So something like this, and again we'll set physics type to kinematic. And let's search for hip. Maybe I called it something else. Armor, leg armor. Okay, cool. So for this, we'll create a shape and we'll do box because that's probably going to best fit what we've got here. It does get a little hard to see things sometimes with the way these things render, but we'll do our best. So unlike anim dynamics where you have the local joint offset, we don't have to really worry about that. The pivot is going to be up where the joint is, and we can actually move that as well. And then this will be the actual collision. So you can see right here, we already have some clipping between these two collision bodies. So what we'd want to do is probably move this a little bit. I wonder if I hit mirror. Hey, it does work. Cool. And again, if we hit simulate now, that hip pad will fall off because it hasn't been set to kinematic, but otherwise everything stays put. And we're not going to set this to kinematic, we're actually going to leave it as, we're going to set it to simulated. And then what we need to do is create a constraint. And I'm going to be honest with you, I always forget the order that you need to do this in because it's a little bit weird. I believe if we do pelvis, constraints, right click, do constraints, and then leg armor start, I think that's correct. So now if we do simulate, you'll see that it hinges from that. So the parent the thing that you want to constrain to, right click on that, constraints, and then choose the thing that you're going to constrain. Constrain, in the normal rigging sense, means to connect, but really what it means in here is we're creating these little kind of like attachment points. So this attachment point is exactly where the bone is for that leg start armor. And then you also probably notice that it's still going right through this collision. Well, that's just because we haven't actually specified it should collide with it. So if we select this and then this, we can do enable collision. So now if we click on this, you can see that this is purple, meaning that it will collide with it. And you can see right there, it's just not gonna move. One of the interesting things about the physics bodies is that you have the body itself, the shape, which is our collision shape, but then you also have the constraint. And the constraint is actually where the settings are for how stiff it is, how much it can move in certain axes. And you'll see here we don't have the constraints visible, so we just need to go to settings and go to show constraints. So there's our constraint, and you can see here that we can, for linear, everything is locked, meaning it's not going to move in any of our translate axes, but for angular, everything right now is set to free, meaning it can rotate in every axis, which we probably don't want. So let's actually set them all to locked. So this twist motion limited, I'll put like 20. I think it's okay if there's a little bit of twist there. And then for swing, we can maybe do, we'll leave it at 45 and see how that looks. Then there's other settings in here, like let's see. Yeah, there's some damping on the swing and twist. It actually sets those out separately. So that's kind of nice that you can damp it differently in those axes. And then I believe if we click on the body itself, there's also damping on the body itself. So there's a lot more settings to work with the physics asset, with the rigid body, which can make it, depending on what you're doing, it can be kind of overkill, but I think it's still worth showing. So let's go ahead and plug this in and compile. So now you can see that that's working. Let's go ahead and actually just play this in game. So that movement's pretty cool, but we're still, the cloth is still going through it. You can kind of see that here and there. And honestly, I think what the easiest solution there would be is to go back into our cloth paint, go into our clothing, and paint out some of this influence in here, because otherwise I think it's going to be difficult. We could try to add the physics shape to the cloth collision, but if you'll remember, cloth collision kind of wants us to use the tapered capsules, so it's a little bit harder, I think, to get something nice there. Let's try this. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. It's actually was used to Maya's paint tools where I could hold down shift to smooth. That's what I was trying to do. So I'll smooth around those vertices that I just painted out. Just do this one side so we can test it. Okay, so we'll need to fix that because now it's kind of doing a little bit too much. So maybe what we could try doing is, let's go back into here. Let's just set this to something smaller, because even a value of 10 is still 10 centimeters of travel distance, which is actually quite a bit for something up here. Like, we don't really need that to go that far. Looks like I might have painted out something there. Let's see if this helps. Cool, so we're not seeing it go through the skin anymore. One thing that we could also try doing is actually pushing this up a little bit, which would push that out. Cool. So I feel like we're getting to a spot where there's a lot less cloth interfering with that pad, and we're still getting some motion. I feel like on that jump, we should make this constraint do a whole lot more. So right now, it is limited to 45. Let's actually just set that to 90, so it has more room to move. Every time I open this, it doesn't remember that setting, which is a little bit annoying. So with the constraint selected, I believe you can actually do something like this. So you can rotate it. So if you saw where it was before, it's allowing it to swing in quite a bit, but we don't even want it to go anywhere near that far because we have collision there anyway. So what we really want is something maybe more like that. Cool. And let's see if we can actually hit mirror on this and it works. You can see that it did mirror the body, but it didn't really mirror... Oh, and it mirrored the enabled collision, but it didn't really mirror the constraint setup. So this is still limited, and I believe we had 90 and 20. So 90, 20, and then we also kind of rotated this like that. Let's see how that looks. Cool. I think that looks pretty good. All right, so I think for the belt, we'll go ahead and do anim dynamics in the animation blueprint. I think that will look best. Let me just clean this up real quick. I think one of the things I like to do is kind of comment my animation blueprints out and kind of color code them just to make it easy to see the different sections. For this character, there's not too much stuff in here, but on some characters, this can get to be a lot to look at. So we'll do that. And then I'll just bring over one of these anim dynamic nodes to start from for the belt. So let's find the belt joint in here and then go ahead and compile so we can see our bounds. And I think for now we'll just set local joint offset to 0, and that will prevent the angular limits from taking effect. And that way we can actually kind of see and adjust our box extents. So let me open up the mesh here and see what the axes are for the belt. I think, okay, so X is the long axis, Y is the front to back. So let's go in here and we'll increase this on the X, and then we'll also increase it on the Y. Try 30. It might be too much. And then the height I'll make a little bit smaller. So let's go 25 on Y. All right, cool. So I think that should work. Now we can reapply the local joint offsets. And for the angular limits, let's see here. Rotate Y will be our main rotation axis that we'll want to simulate. And then we'll put maybe like a little bit on X X and Z just to get some motion in there. So for Y, let's maybe do like -30 and 30. And then we'll do -10 and 10 for Z and see how this looks. Okay, that's way too much on Y. So maybe -30 and 10 for Y. There we go. So looks okay. Let's actually just see it in game and see how this ends up looking. It's a little bit hard to see. Let's go into the third-person character blueprint and click on the follow camera. Actually, no, we want the camera boom, I think. Click on camera boom and then target arm length. Let's set that to something more like 250 maybe. Basically just trying to bring in the camera so we can see the character a little bit better. There we go. Okay, let me full screen this. I don't really love how it kind of swims back into, like it kind of twists very slowly. So let's go ahead and reduce the Z-axis, I believe it was. So we'll make that something much, yeah, Z-axis. We'll make that something much smaller. Maybe like -3 and 3. Cool. So yeah, I think that will wrap up this particular video. And then there's not a lot of stuff left to do, I would say. I think, you know, for me personally, I would probably want to get a level that might be a little bit cooler to have her in, get a weapon in there, get some better animations, etc. But yeah, I think, and I might do those things. I can also see that the retargeting on her fingers is pretty gnarly, and that's because I didn't straighten her fingers out in the retarget pose. But yeah, otherwise I think, you know, I think I went over enough stuff here. So hopefully that was useful, and yeah, thanks for watching.